usage. We have to take care to grammatically correct and be acceptable in our speech as an announcer. So, you have to be careful not to transpose syllables or words, switching their places, or like a red dog transposed to a dead frog. And this happens every once in a blue moon when we're speaking, but certainly when we're an announcer, we have to avoid that at all costs. Many blunders in speech often happen subconsciously. It is an important plan and practice in delivery to be attentive of your own speech to minimize these problems. So, as I've been recording these videos for your review, I have noticed that the pitfalls that I have that I want to work on. So I can see how if I slow down, if I study each slide carefully before I present it, that will go a long ways in minimizing any type of errors I may make in my redaction of the material. So if you keep your focus and you don't try to go rushing, you won't stumble on your words as much. Okay, so language is always changing, vocabulary changes, the way you convey ideas change. So before a word becomes official, sometimes they're jargon or slang. So you should be aware of anything that might be offensive to a particular group in your audience, insensitive, hurtful, and you avoid using this type of language when conveying ideas. Also, reconstructing phrases or using more professional and neutral language can remedy this. Be aware of when speech should be more or less formal, such as when presenting to a government official or giving an educational speech. Finally, use language that is relevant and appropriate to the theme of the speech and the message being delivered. Sometimes too much information is not relevant. So, when you're speaking about neutral language, let me tell you what the opposite of neutral language is. Words that are charged, like you charge your car. Okay, when you use words that are charged, you're using a word that's going to instigate your audience, and it's going to send a message that's going to have your audience react emotionally. Like that was disgraceful, rather than saying this could have been handled differently, or you're making judgment calls by elevating your words to, instead of using very, you might say disproportionately. So when you use charged words, you have to be very careful. Again, language is always changing, and we want to make sure that we keep up with the times. So we also want to avoid sounding amateurish, which means that you are not a professional, you're not an expert, you're a novice, and you're an amateur. So how do we do that? You speak fluidly. Don't hesitate in pronouncing words, so you have to make sure that you know how to pronounce them. Avoid saying or Avoid mispronouncing words. Throwaway patterns should be avoided. So that means that your voice trails off at the end of a phrase or statement. This pattern can make words unintelligible or inaudible. Okay, and concentration is critical. You can't be thinking of your delivery along with something else. That's totally out of the question. So you are expected to give a clear delivery in spite of any difficult situation that may present itself or any possible distraction. What else do you have to keep in mind? Speaking with distinct speech. Avoid mumbling, slurring. Improve your enunciation. In turn, improves your distinct speech. For instructional material, make sure you get all of the information that you need, and make sure that you get it across in the best way possible. So another improper way of speaking is your rate of speech look back to chapter 5 if you want to practice your speech. It gave you parameters as to how many words per minute you should be speaking. Misplaced emphasis is self-explanatory, so make sure that you emphasize what needs to be emphasized. And dead deliveries is when you sound like, oh, I'm delivering this, but I really don't care, and I don't know what I'm doing, and yeah, that's just the way that it's gonna go. Audience rapport. To have a rapport with someone means that you are getting along and you both are giving and taking. So radio can provide a sense of companionship for those who live or spend a large portion of their time alone. Let's say you have a long trek in the car, you can't be watching television, but you can certainly be listening to the radio, you can be listening to a broadcast, and you also want to be sounding knowledgeable in whatever it is that you're speaking about. So with younger audiences, it's often helpful to be cool and up to date on the latest news and trends. Talking to the public and being personable will help build a great reputation for yourself and for your line of work. You also have to have integrity. If people see that you cannot be trusted, either you don't know what you're talking about, you're not honest, you're not straightforward, you made a mistake, you don't apologize, you don't acknowledge it, your audience is going to think, oh, they did this on purpose, they're leading me astray. This all ties into building a connection with the audience and building that rapport. Okay, so how should we perform on the internet? You'll have to adjust your announcing style. There is no one size fits all. Depending on your audience, the context, and the medium that is being used, you have to give your delivery making use of all of these factors for your best performance. If you have a podcast, for instance, an interview, a visual demonstration, or any other variety of performance approaches, you need to keep this in mind. The tactic should be one of connected chatting. You're addressing a camera, talk into it, have it sound casual and as if though you're conversing, and if you're discussing a topic, as if though you're discussing a topic with a person across the table from you. And a lot of podcasts now use this type of situation where you have a guest coming in and you're having your guest put forward the type of material and information and messaging that your audience is seeking. Okay, so working from a script can make your performance sound stilted and non-conversational. So what do? When you find that working from notes is going to be better than a script, then you can sound more spontaneous. You don't want to sound like this is all rehearsed and this was pre-done. You do, however, by yourself rehearse numerous times and be prepared to record multiple takes. So, for instance, if this was a professional, obviously I'm doing the best job I can. I'm delivering this review in the best manner that I can. However, I don't have a crew and I don't have the facilities and the time to be able to stop and splice and add. If I cough, if I sneeze, if I have an itch, we have to keep going. But if something major happens, and it has, I have stopped and started over. So remember, the entire world will have access to your performance, and on the internet, it may be available for a very long time. In conclusion, we need to remember to use English correctly, utilize words and expressions freely, be sensitive to anything that might come across as offensive, use an intimate conversational style, and you need to put forth the effort in order to make it look like it's effortless, but it actually is a very difficult and daunting task. With that being said, we're going to move right along to chapter 6, which is commercial announcing. So, the underlying purpose of media, be it streaming, internet, radio, television, cable, satellite, is what? To draw an audience. This review is assuming that you are going to take the time and the interest to watch these videos and then review the material that we learned. In order to do that, I have to make these reviews as interesting, as articulate, and as exciting as possible, given the parameters of the material I'm working with, of course. So media rely on the scale of commercials to generate revenue. So if you don't have commercials, you don't have the money to put this forward, because it's very expensive to have time on the air. Many different announcing situations will put the performer in the position of reading and recording commercials. The ability to sell is extremely important in your development as a media performer. You have to sell. You have to sell yourself, and you have to sell products, and you have to sell the vendors that buy time on your show. So, there are 3 platforms where media performance occurs: on radio, television, and social media. So in social media, you have audio and video, and hearing an interesting approach can do much to convince a potential advertiser. So you're always luring people that have businesses, sell products, etc., to want to have a commercial on your time slot. So a larger station may have 1 or more creatives whose job is to come up with a steady stream of new ideas and commercial copy. So I have a son that's in advertising, and he does not work on the creative side, he works on the client relationship side. So even within advertising, getting commercials, producing commercials, you have big companies that have within them big groups that specialize in only one thing. You're not jack of all trades and master of one. You have to make sure that you have the jack of all trades, master one perfectly, and at the same time be aware of everybody else's function. Okay, at the other extreme, you could find yourself writing commercial and perhaps even selling time, as does occur at small facilities. So if you live in a rural state, I'm using, of course, the example of the United States, and you have a small TV station, you might find yourself having to do multiple jobs, and that's okay, as long as you know what you're getting into. While most are scripted, some commercials are done live from fact sheets from which on-the-air talent chooses the words that will be used on the spot. That can be pretty scary if you're not quick on your feet, so you have to know yourself well and your potential and your particular skill set. Audio and video content on the internet are improving advertising media. That happens all the time. I don't care for a lot of the commercials. We have, during our major sporting events, commercials that cost millions and millions of dollars, and usually those are very good. But your run-of-the-mill commercial that you listen to every day, to me, they're kind of boring, and they certainly don't reach me. I mute them every time. So, viral videos are one aspect of online content. Advertising videos are also shown before the content begins and interrupt content while you're viewing. Is there anything more irritating than you're reading an article and then you get an advertisement right in the middle of your reading the article? So I have never bought a block for ads, but I'm seriously considering it. Now, that's not the line of business I'm in. So somebody like my son would say, Mom, we need advertising in the world, and we do. But if I'm in the market for something, I do my research. So teaser campaigns are short, cryptic ads that call attention to an upcoming product launch, such as a movie, and you get these all the time. Short form advertising is the standard format we watch on TV. And today, audiences watch for 8 to 10 seconds, especially on social media, and then they move on. Okay, thank you for your kind attention, and we will be back with 6.3 in just a moment. we're going to take a look at commercials on the radio. Anyone who listens to the radio is aware of the wide range of forms that commercials can take, from a simple message read by an announcer to expensive, carefully produced mini dramas that pack an amazing amount of material and action into a few seconds. Known as a straight read commercial, this type of spot relies on the skills of the announcer to bring the copy to life. Performance elements such as emphasis, pausing, inflection, rate become critical in the straight read commercial. A variation of the straight read is the fact sheet commercial, and because there is no script or commercial copy, the announcer must ad-lib, in other words, think and do as he goes on the spot, which is much more difficult than you might think. Well, I don't have to think. I know how difficult it is because sometimes your words just flow and you're articulate and you're able to bring to your remembrance specific words, and sometimes you're stuck and you're like, I'm looking for a word that's, and you're describing it to somebody in person, but you can't do that on the air. So what's a music bed? Common element in many radio commercials can be added to punch up a straight read commercial. In this case, music plays while the copy is presented. So let's say you have a small radio station. The announcer is probably also adding the music bed, either in a recording session or live. So a critical element is the balance between the voice and the music. You don't want to overwhelm or overpower one or the other. The donut commercial is a combination of a recorded message, usually provided by the advertising agency, plus local live copy that's often a jingle. So a jingle is something like, you can take Folgers out of the coffee, but you can't take the coffee out of Folgers. So anything like that, where you have a cute little expression that you put into a jingle. The spokesperson commercial often employs well-known sports or music figures, although anyone widely known may be used, and some of these appearances are quite effective and others are not. Some of the advertisers in our country have gotten into big trouble trying to push an ideology using particular elements of our society, and it has backfired on them and they've done their brand a lot of damage. Commercials that include multiple voices, music, sound effects, singers are known as high production value commercials. You can hear about production value in a movie, a commercial, and just about anything that's a visual component. Music and sound effects usually embellish this type of commercial. An announcer may have a limited role in adding a tag or product information that can't easily be presented in a dialogue. So let's take a look at television, cable, and internet in terms of commercials. So the ones that are used for radio are also used for television, and often with minor variations, and the astute performer will be cognizant of the basic television commercial format. So you need to be savvy. Key developments for the television commercial announcer have been cable advertising and the rapid rise of social media platforms on the internet. Many of the new ads are relatively simple. You can have an interview with the owner, a customer of a business, views of an establishment, and some are half-hearted attempts at comedy. In a voiceover one, the sales message is given by an off-screen announcer while the video of the product is seen on the screen. Voiceover work is a big part of commercial performance and will be discussed later in this chapter. So, in television, as in radio, the spokesperson format is very popular, and many times, at least in our country, celebrity endorsements go a long way. Celebrities are idolized in the United States. So in a testimonial, the person speaking on behalf of the product is endorsing the product. They're saying, hey, I use this, I love it, you should use it too. The general concept is, hey, if it's good enough for this person who's so famous, it should be good enough for me. I'm just average. Regardless of the actual commercial format, let's consider how the announcer approaches commercial copy and prepares for a professional delivery. Okay, let's consider the basic structure of the commercial. If you divide a commercial into parts, beginning, middle, end, you'll see that in general, you have a basic motivational structure, and it has 4 stages. First, they grab your attention. Second, they're going to create in you a need. Ooh, I can't believe I've done without this product or this service. Satisfying that need, and then they make it so that you want to act now. Okay? Many commercials follow this problem solution format. So the product is conveniently the perfect solution for a problem that they have just created for you. Then you'll find more about the product, and then a call for action known as the stinger. Get this easy to use Sunny Grow Today, or act now and you'll buy one get one free, or act now, this price is only good for the next 20 minutes, or if you call in the next 20 minutes you'll get this or that. Okay? Not every commercial will so conveniently break down into these elements, but you'll see many of them following this format. What do you do when you want to analyze a commercial? Start by determining what the commercial wants to accomplish. Many companies are selling a product or a service. Sometimes they want to create an image. They want to create a positive image. They want time to get a clear idea of the people who created it and were trying to accomplish something. So get your preparation underway with 2 or 3 silent readings of the script, and that way you get the feel of what the message they want to convey is. And you have to decide, what tone of voice am I going to use? What tone of voice is appropriate? Often commercials have a somewhat serious tone at the beginning when the problem is presented, and then you change to a lighter tone. Oh, we have found the solution to the problem. Energy is important in commercials because you want to attract, and then you want to keep your audience, because if they look at it and go, oh my gosh, and then they switch, you're done. Okay? So you got to have the attraction, the tone, the energy. However, comedic commercials can be dangerous because it's easy to overdo the humor. What you think is funny may not be funny to your sponsor or to your audience, but the sponsor always gets to look at the commercial before. So consider what the message is, what the advertiser wants the audience to learn. Listeners are more likely to buy if they're urged to do it now. This is a reason for lines like "sale ends Friday," which often show up in the stinger of the spot, so you need to deliver it with the correct style. The style of the delivery will be influenced by the intended audience. You do not communicate with the teenagers and a very young audience in the same way as you would with grandparents or older adults. Knowing your audience is the best way to know how to speak to them. So after you familiarize yourself with a copy, decide how you're going to deliver it. You can have maybe other people listen to you. You can record yourselves. You could think of keywords you want to emphasize, and then you'll see how to grow that copy. Timing is very important. You have to read that commercial and present it in the amount of time that is allotted for that commercial. If you're a professional, you would know and intuit just how your timing is going just by the mere fact that you've been practicing all along. So a commercial copy will include time indications. You get familiar, you get to decide where the pause is, the emphasis, give it a reading, look at the results, adjust your timing if necessary. Don't just read words, consider your sound. Listen to the tempo. Use your performance elements that you study. Become familiar with a number of words you can read easily in 30 seconds. So that's going to be your reference point. With that in mind, you'll know if you need to speed up, if you're right on target, if you need to slow down. And this is very important so that you can have listener understanding. More likely, you'll be asked to read at a normal rate without many vocal techniques, and your voice will be electronically processed to speed up without changing the pitch. Okay, very few commercials are made in which the talent sounds half awake. Not good. If you're talking to anyone and they sound like they're half awake, this is not good. One of the accepted elements in selling is that you need to catch and hold the attention of the potential buyer. You need to sound alive, enthused. It's best to get a second opinion. Always ask someone else to look at your delivery. The hard sell commercial has a feeling of tension and excitement. The soft sell commercial conveys a feeling of relaxation, and the announcer seems to speak in much more conversational tones. Which approach you decide to use has to do with your sponsor, how they want it to come off, and what your intended audience is looking for. Two of the most important aspects of selling products are how you show products and how you react to the products. The most important is to never mask the product label with your finger or your hands. Some performers use a little trick to mark the product directly opposite to the center so that when you're looking at it, you see the label carefully. So you have three gestures that people like to use: caress, cradle, and the hug. Large cards with product information or even mannequins displaying a product can be handled in this manner. And remember, look natural, lifelike, and not artificial and stiff. Gestures and expressions. As a television commercial announcer, your eyes are extremely important. You'll often use a whole range of facial expressions such as a smile, a wink, an arched eyebrow when dealing with a product. Good performers can admire the product as they anticipate how good it's going to be, then actually tasting it. Express non-verbally, it was better than you even thought it was. So you're putting it in your mouth and you're like, it helps to sell a product, and it's what good commercial performers get handsomely rewarded or paid to do. Let's look at ad-lib commercials. Some sponsors like to have the talent to ad-libs, so you do it on the spot. You're handed a fact sheet, you're expected to come up with an interesting, attractive presentation. You should at least be familiar with the subject. Ad-lib doesn't mean that you're unprepared. In many cases, that's the first thing you will want to do is plan a scenario or a thread. So making it personal makes it even more appealing and genuine. Another approach would be to consider the qualities of the product that are meaningful to you, and then a good practice is to pick up a product and talk about it for 30 seconds. Sounds like a plan. There is a clear degree of acting involved in being excited over a product, but often the demands can go well beyond that. For these different roles, the ability to do voices is both a talent and a developed skill. If you are doing radio or voiceovers, your age or what you look like has little bearing on your work. However, for television commercials, you have to give some consideration to who you are. A 20-year-old is not likely to be cast as an old man, and Many commercials do not want to use individuals with movie star looks. They want the actors to appear to be as real as possible. So, if you're looking at a commercial that's for bug spray or something for aches and pains, chances are they're not going to look for an actor. They're going to look for your neighbor next door. And we will continue with chapter 6 after this pause. Thank you for your kind attention. Let's talk a little bit about commercial voiceovers. In radio, essentially a voiceover work is what's the accepted norm, but it's also found in TV, film, and the internet. It means that your voice does the work, but you never appear on camera. Voiceovers can be found in television commercials, news, public service announcements, and documentaries. Mostly documentaries, I want to add. The project range can be from a few seconds with a commercial or public service announcement to an assignment in a 2-hour documentary. Now, this being said, let me just tell you that commercials can take many formats. Public service announcements are very short and infrequent, so that's why I said that generally you're going to have the voiceovers in documentaries. So many voiceover specialists work at developing a variety of sounds to broaden their appeal, and creating a range of voices can be helpful to you too. So I would see this happening in movies that are cartoons. Pay particular attention to your energy levels and style, and you will be expected to retain these through what could be multiple takes. Okay, so public service announcements is a spot run by a broadcast cable station that promotes non-profit organizations or government agencies. Since you have different ones from ours, and chances are if you become a broadcaster of some sort, you're going to have your own rules. So I'm going to go into the things that would be standard, the topics here that would be standard in any country. If you have a promo, that's a spot run by an individual station or network to promote itself. Usually highlights shows that are coming up, special programming, key personalities of a station, or just general knowledge of the broadcast station. Announcers are capable of handling radio and television commercials, and these individuals will find that they are called upon to be the talent for public service and promotional spots as well. Concluding, we see that commercials are something that are imperative, and it is at the crux of developing a talent. You have to know how to format yourself to be able to speak in a commercial setting for radio, TV, cable, internet, and do it effectively and well. Commercial announcers utilize all the basic performance skills, but especially you have to have the ability to understand and convey the mood of a commercial, the ability to read the script in the time allotted, and the ability to become an actor for the length of the commercial spot. This is a very competitive field. And for the beginning commercial performer, it is important to develop your talent, develop your network and experience, and what have we said before? Practice, practice, practice. Let's take a look now at chapter 7. Interviewing. The interview is the basic instrument for gathering information for radio, television, internet, and cable. Interviews should be interesting, should be fun. They always have to look easy, but you have to prepare a long time and a lot beforehand. Good interviewing is a combination of practice and preparation, and with both the practice, the preparation, the awareness of the skills you're gonna need, and practice, 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 you're gonna become a professional interviewer. What kinds do we have? News and features. News interviews are designed to gather information about a current issue, something that's happening, etc. Feature interviews are to entertain, provide information about something, or focus on a person or an issue. Both news and feature interviews can be done in the studio or on location. Many interviews today are highly edited, and often the audience only hears one or two responses from a much larger interview. However, nothing could be further from the truth that even in short interviews, you have to be well organized, planned, prepared in order to accomplish your goal in your allotted time. Let's take a look at the basic structure of the media interview. So in a media interview, you tend to have two categories: those that will be longer and aired more or less complete, or those from which brief segments will be edited. Frequently, the interview portion is just one part of a longer report. Although it will vary a little depending on the nature of the produced opening, you will want to follow a 5-step pattern for your interview. 1, the opening. Second is an introduction. Third is the question that's going to be posed and then the ensuing discussion. 4 is a reintroduction of the topic, the person, etc. Finally, the close. If the interview is topic oriented, you will want to make a statement about the subject to be discussed so that the audience understands what you will be covering and why. When introducing your guest, be sure to get the name, the title, the job, and the guest's qualifications. If the person is the subject, a bit about his or her background, their expertise, anything unique about him can be used to explain why the audience should want to listen and be interested. Next, you welcome your guest. This helps to establish a friendly atmosphere and develop a rapport with that person and with your audience. But avoid trite questions or remarks like, "How are you? Thanks for finding time in your busy schedule." Don't do that. The third step is conducting the interview itself. At the beginning, you probably will be asked to interview many local people on many topics, and that's at the beginning of your career. This is when an effective interviewer can use his or her knowledge and skills to create a successful interview. The fourth part of an effective interview is reestablishing the credentials of the guest. The final part is the close. So when you're working with multiple remote guests, so that's when you see a split screen where you have a liberal, a conservative. If it's a liberal station, you'll have 3 liberals and 1 dissenting conservative voice, and the opposite applies if you're looking at a conservative audience. You'll have 3 conservatives and then 1 liberal voice, which is dissenting. They are connected to the two-way audio via an earpiece. Guests could start responding to each other excessively. Hence, you might have to step in if the discussion gets off subject or is running long. To finesse that is really difficult, and the good ones make it look easy. But I watch a lot of programming in the United States that uses this type of formatting, and you can really see the talent when they have it, how they can maneuver the conversation, and they can come in and give somebody else an opportunity to speak as well. In a radio studio, the guest and host will probably face each other while sitting at a table or counter. To make sure the guest is comfortable, make sure you have your microphones, the equipment, talk to your guests before, etc. So you can see how to make them feel relaxed and at ease. Encourage your guests to speak in a normal voice. Briefly explain the operation of the studio, especially if this is your guest's first visit to a radio or television studio. Equipment can be very intimidating, so the usual television studio interview consists of chairs, desks with chairs. Occasionally they will be set up in a more face-to-face manner. Television studios are very busy and it can be distracting to your guests, so you have to make them aware of this, let them know that they need to maintain direct eye contact with you so they're not distracted with everything else that's going on, and make sure the director understands what you're planning to do with your guest. Camera shots are important. The host should be aware that there will be various camera positions, so make them aware of that very clearly beforehand, and some interviewing skills can be practiced, but others can't because it comes down to how well you put it all together during a live or a pre-recorded interview. Prior experience and knowledge in an area can help, but thorough research about your topic is essential for an effective interview. You can't come in thinking you're going to wing it when you have peripheral knowledge. You have to really know your material well. Many other internet news sites provide useful, helpful background information. You can read books, have conversations with friends. That way you can get more interesting ideas. And to become excellent, it is imperative for you to spend large amounts of time reading, listening to other news outlets, so that you can have a broad range of current events, introduce your knowledge about them into your interview where appropriate. However, what you cannot do is try to sound like you know everything and you're the expert on everything, and try to speak for your guests rather than letting the guests be speaking for themselves. So you begin by researching the topic in person. Start with what you find interesting and investigate what you don't understand. Chances are that your audience won't either. If you don't get it and you're in this field, chances are your audience may be struggling as well. So if such materials are available, try to read any books or articles written by that guest. This can help you better question and guide the discussion. Be curious, be current. The audience wants to listen to new ideas and stories that they can relate to. And the most important thing to remember is that good preparation equips you to determine a focus for the interview. Experienced interviewers prefer not to do one as they feel it kills spontaneity. As you finish your research and plan your questions, ask yourself, what's my goal? Some guests feel nervous about an interview and want to have some control. You may get requests for the actual questions in advance. This might take away from the spontaneity and it may look stilted. However, if the guest is going to perform better and they feel a need to be prepared, then by all means you can give them the questions that you're going to ask ahead of time. For the beginning interviewer or the pre-interviewer, that's a valuable tool. You can do it in person, go over it online, send an email, etc. If you discuss the experience, you might come up with things that you find that are going to be very interesting that you can include, but don't get caught up in a lot of details such as, oh, where did you grow up? Where did you go to school? Do you have a favorite hobby? Unless this is pertinent and germane to the goal with your interview. So you only resort to these things if it's going to add. You're not trying to do fillers. You're trying to have a really compact, pithy, and compelling interview, not just kind of go and filling the blanks as you go. So once you get a basic sense of something you'll be discussing, immediately move on to the next area. Thank you for your careful attention, and we'll pick up here in just a moment.